readily accept that. We will
A special good morning to you, our viewers, St. Lucians watching from the diaspora and our residents here on Ireland. Thank you so much for joining us. We have another installment, another edition of St. Lucia's COVID-19 response report for today, Monday, the 25th of May, 2020. My name is Jessie Leonce and I'm joined in, as usual, by my colleague, Carlton Cyril. Good morning, Carlton.
Bonjour, Jessie, et puis bonjour, Saint Lucia, et puis pour ces gens nous qui l'autre pays, nous gardons encore toujours un plaisir pour nous. À son lundi bon matin, aujourd'hui, c'est le 25 mai, nous toujours apprécier présence pour vous écouter nous à sur radio, nous dit bonjour. Nous pas oublier ces gens nous qui à sur internet là sur Facebook et puis NTN live, nous dit toujours un plaisir. Quand la coutume, nous avons information, nous avons développement là pour faire COVID-19. Oui, écoute.
We have quite a few updates for you this morning. The Parliament will be being convened this week, Tuesday and Thursday, and we also have a clarification from the National Insurance Corporation. We had the communications consultant at the NIC calling in on our Saturday program, our weekend review, to clarify the mode of payouts under the economic relief program. So we have that for you this morning, as well as St. Lucia receiving more returning nationals into quarantine over the weekend. We have the details to these and other top stories for the COVID-19 response coming up in just a moment. Stay tuned.
Saint Lucia ka registré vermin corona ek I ka fait mouvement ek en chay vitesse tan chaque canef ka kouye pour vigilance publique là fait wolo parler en place publique qu'on bol en main base ti boutique changer distance sociale 6 pieds hod yon a lot I ka travail tan si ou senti ko pas cordial quarantine ko pas en contact et puis l'autre en cas où te toi pe exposé c'est un écouye free 11 ou ben n'importe clinique yo pou les pays a dimi à clé ça veut dire les supermarkets pharmacie et puis ATM yo accessible avant c'était souhait pays à clé en plein ça veut dire tout bagay fermé à 24 heures servi protocole comme sorti par bureau indication santé nous tout ensemble ça sauver vermine corona si nous tout servi jidla à toutes les
together let us win this war Saint Lucia be a soldier together we can beat this corona.
Thank you so much for staying tuned. If you're just joining us, so we're at the top of the morning for our St. Lucia COVID-19 response report. Among the top stories, we have a Parliament resuming, convening this week. We have the National Insurance Corporation clarifying its mode of payouts under the economic relief program. And we have St. Lucia receiving more returning nationals into quarantine. We begin with word on Parliament. The Government of St. Lucia will be returning to the House to the Prime Minister and Minister for Finance, Economic Growth, Job Creation, External Affairs and the Public Service will be putting forward an extension, a proposal for an extension in the House of the state of emergency. I'm just going to read from the release, the order paper. Be it resolved that Parliament further extend for an additional period commencing from the 1st day of June 2020 and ending the 30th of September 2020 in accordance with Section 17 of the Constitution of Saint Lucia, Cap 1.01, the Constitution of Saint Lucia, extension of resolution of Parliament approving declaration of state of emergency passed as statutory instrument number 60 of 2020 that extended the state of emergency for an additional period commencing from the 27th day of April 2020 and ending on the 31st day of May 2020. This will be the second extension that we have seen of the state of emergency here in Saint Lucia. Should it be passed tomorrow in the House. So we encourage you to be vigilant at this time as we await word from the House of Parliament on this proposed extension of the state of emergency. Further, the the Prime Minister and Minister for Finance will be also putting forward further, be it resolved that Parliament authorizes the Minister for Finance to borrow by means of advances sums not exceeding $85 million from commercial banks for a period of 6 months from the date hereof, which sums shall be charged on and paid out of the consolidated fund. Be it resolved that Parliament authorizes the Minister for Finance to borrow the sum of US $29 million by way of a rapid credit facility loan from the International Monetary Fund for the purpose of capital and recurrent expenditure. The loan is repayable at a 0% interest rate, inclusive of a 5.5-year grace period with a final maturity of 10 years, and semi-annually through a standing authorization to the International Monetary Fund to debit St. Lucia's XDR account with the amount of all financial obligations to the International Monetary Fund for the Rapid Credit Facility loan as the financial obligations fall due. The bill's first reading of the amendment, the Citizenship by Investment Bill, an amendment will be read for the first time tomorrow by the Honorable Prime Minister and Minister for Finance. So that you can expect the House of Assembly will be convening tomorrow morning to put forward this extension of the state of emergency, as well as the borrowing in the sum of $29 million by way of a rapid credit facility loan from the International Monetary Fund. And there are also the papers to be laid by the Honorable Prime Minister and Minister for Finance, Economic Growth, Job Creation and External Affairs. There are also papers to be laid by the Honorable Minister for Economic Development, Housing, Urban Renewal, Transport and Civil Aviation. Also the Minister of Agriculture, Fisheries, Physical Planning, Natural Resources and Cooperatives, and the Minister for Commerce, Industry, Investment, Enterprise, Development and Consumer Affairs. So quite a few papers to be laid, as well as the motion from the Honorable Prime Minister. Carlton?
Merci tellement, Jesse. Quand la côté, mais quand nous avons développement, et ça qui a fait, especially là, pour faire COVID, nous avons ici, bon matin, lundi. Nous commençons puis nouvelle, qui consiste qui joignent demain les 26, qui consiste qui joignent. Parmi bagay yo qui discuter, c'est au cas où Premier ministre l'a commandé pour ajouter État de secours anonyme, il voulait ça ajouter parmi l'autre bagaille aussi, il voulait permission au Parlement pour ça prêter pas plus passer 85 millions de dollars. Là aussi nous attend li qui a prêté à peu près 29 millions la américain qui y servi qui déposer en consolidated fund pour faire des affaires pays. Et bien, tout fait qu'on informé, ça c'est demain. Résolution ça yo kay li premier ministre là kay essayer si yo kay ajouter état de secours qui était supposé bout le 31 mai à présent ou ka là yo ka mandé pour extension pour ajouter ça kay commencer le 1er juin pour le 30 septembre encore c'est ça qui consiste les jeunes premier ministre là et c'est pression qui a argumenté tant qui c'est état de secours nous ni à présent qui a commencé 1er juin pour les 30 septembre et qu'a essayé faire ça parmi l'autre bagaille aussi ou qu'a été comme ministre des finances premier ministre là aussi qu'a acheté permission pour comment dit plus bonheur pour y prêter pas plus passer 85 millions de dollars c'est banque commerciale et puis ça c'est pour 6 mois durant des 6 mois de temps il est demandé pour yo ka payer consolidated fund aussi il a demandé permission pour prêter encore 29 millions de dollars il a prêté ça l'argent ça aussi qu'a sorti hod IMF là et ça c'est pour yo servir pour faire différents projets et puis là vini pour bill pour payer changer encore condition là vini pour 29 millions de dollars condition parmi l'autre c'est 0% et l'intérêt à ce point durant des 5 ans et demi et puis qu'il y a une angoisse qui a trouvé quoi maturité en 10 ans quoi tout ça a résultat du Covid yo kabayo c'est condition ça pour vie payer trouver qu'on informé pas du temps nous a dit ça l'autre bill qui est pris pour considération elle est venu pour CIPA Citizen by Investment ça qui trouvé quoi là aussi adressé et nous avons ministre qui est responsable pour agriculture puis ministre parmi l'autre qui est responsable pour commerce ça qui trouvé quoi demain discuter ou encore public là qu'on a bien savent les vini pour protocole qui déjà établi yo pas kay permettre public là personne hot public là pour venir kay consiste et qu'on kay savent c'est parce que yo ka chaîne distance sociale là et yo ka do ou ça une opportunité pour ouais à sur NTN et ben à sur channel 122 et ben à sur page gouvernement Facebook et ben YouTube quoi trouver quoi informer.
As Carlton stated, Tuesday's sitting is scheduled to commence at 10 a.m. The House of Assembly will convene at 10 a.m. A sitting of the House of Assembly is also scheduled for Wednesday, May 27th, 2020 at 10 a.m. So that will be a continuation of the lower house convening. The sitting of the Senate is scheduled for Thursday, May 28th, 2020 at 10 a.m. as well this week, in keeping with the protocols established by the authorities for management of the coronavirus in Saint Lucia, this crisis, and with a view to ensuring that there are established protocols, members of the public will not be allowed in the chamber gallery during the sittings. Kindly note that the public can view the live proceedings on the National Television Network, NTN, Channel 122, the Government of Saint Lucia's Facebook page, or the Government of Saint Lucia's YouTube channel. So please take note of that. Parliament will be convening this week in part to propose the extension of the state of emergency to the end of September. And we are still on alert,
Yes.
for COVID-19. This threat continues to be ever present in this global situation. And St. Lucia, while making a tremendous stride in containing and managing COVID-19, we still have to be alert. We still have to be vigilant. Of course, when we heard from the Operations Command Center week before last, we heard them speak about the triggers that would have us revert back to previous phases of when we were still dealing feverishly with COVID-19 in St. Lucia. And so the authorities are taking all of these things into consideration. We still are under threat of COVID-19, and of course we're seeing with the government of St. Lucia, the Prime Minister forwarding this extension to the end of September. We do hope that during this period we do not see any resurgence of COVID-19 here on island, and we do see a continued reduction of cases. We continue to see, tests coming back negative, but of course better to take all precaution and to have the latitude in order to deal with COVID-19, a resurgence, should we have to go back perhaps under under a heavier curfew.
And especially, Jesse, having said so, taking into consideration that we are now saying full operations or business back to the new as normal, quote unquote, we are looking at the coming weeks. So it would be very interesting to see, you know, how these developments affect us. And of course, remember, we are saying the Prime Minister and Cabinet and his Cabinet, they are acting on advice from the command center. So it's not solely the Prime Minister, but of course, like you rightly mentioned, we also will be taking into consideration where we are before those decisions. Et là, on a encore, mais c'est qu'on nous a bien discuté, parmi les raisons, le Premier ministre a des permissions pour ajouter état de secours. Parce qu'en chaque bagaille qu'a fait, pays a vie ouvert, si même prochain pour venir commencer le 1er juin pour aller pour descendre le 31 septembre, nous avons le Premier ministre a demandé pour ajouter tant ça, et quand chaque autre bagaille a ni pour prendre en considération l'école. Et vous voulez vie ouvert, vous avez permis c'est ma common entrance like CXC et vous avez aussi là venu pour pays à ouvert pour touristes commencer à entrer, hôtel commencer à ouvert quoi toutes ces bagages ça pas du temps nous-mêmes car ça qu'a fait mais ça qui est bien important c'est la pour qu'on y pièce de raison pour Covid nous ni pour vivre pays toujours nous à combattre et nous ni pour faire tout ça nous payer pour abattre les affaires Covid c'est pour ça nous demander monde souple pas quoi business à vie normal non. Nous pouvons rendre raison, nous avons plaidé pour le public pour dire tout bagaille pour qu'on vive normal, qui pas qu'à vivre normal tout de suite, qu'on souple, coûter tout ça qui est pour tout gîte qui baille, et puis tout ça, là, il vient pour le protocole national. Nous avons dit tous les bons matins, Dieu voulait ici, laver la main, mais masse en public, double distance, 6 pieds, sous panique pour quitter caillou, pas quitter, nous avons dit, mon qui ça fait premier bagaille là, c'est où commencer et puis quoi.
That right there, again, we want to let you know that Parliament will be convening this week, a Tuesday sitting scheduled to commence at 10 a.m. Sitting of the House of Assembly is also scheduled for Wednesday, May 27th at 10 a.m. And the sitting of the Senate, the upper house, is scheduled for Thursday, May 28th, 2020 at 10 a.m. So please take note of that. Parliament is returning, will be reconvening to, among other things, put forward the extension of our state of emergency to the end of September. We continue with news from the NIC. On Saturday, we heard from the communications consultant at the NIC, Mr. McNaughton McLean. He gave us an update on the economic relief program. And if you're online, if you're on social media, you would have witnessed many persons querying the double-digit payouts that they've been receiving from the NIC, and some persons upset, some people anxious and worried that they may not have gotten their just dues under the economic relief program. And Mr. McLean came on. We've been hearing and seeing of him on social media, speaking individually to persons online, but he spoke to the GIS on Saturday morning, just clearing the air on this situation. If we could just go to the first clip. He says over 18,000 applications were made under the economic relief program. Of course, all of these applications would have to be assessed to find out, to find out if they are in truth valid. And of course, through the employer portal and the employee portal of the NIC, they would have to corroborate both claims in order to make the payout. But he did just bring some clarity as to how these payments would have been made under the ERP.
Well, the amount payable under the economic relief program is 50% of monthly salary, and that is between $1,000 and $3,000. So if your salary is less than $1,000, the amount is capped at $500, irrespective of whether you would not have qualified for the we just cap it at $500. If your salary is over $3,000, the amount is fixed at $1,500. Of course, in these cases, the amount payable by the NIC will be reduced by any amount employees receive from their employer in financial assistance or income. And in that case, the intention, the program is meant to pay a minimum of $500 to every contributor. So what we want to ensure is that no contributor is paid less than $500, and that can be a combination of payout from your employer and payout from the NIC.
So there you have it, hearing from Mr. McLean, the communications consultant at the NIC, stating that if you make $1,000 or less as a salary, you will get no less than $500. So you must in total get $500. Of course, this would be in some cases a combination of the stipend that you would have received from your employer and the balance being paid by the NIC to make the $500. Mr. McLean stated that absolutely no one under the ERP who received less than $500, there has been no one so far. There's been no report of individuals receiving less than $500 since the rollout of the ERP. And there have been persons coming on social media. We have been hearing the reports of persons complaining, but as far as he is concerned, as far as their assessment has been, not a single instance of anybody being paid out less than $500 in total between the employer stipend and the NIC balance. He did state that in the case of the employer stipend and the NIC balance, it was only a handful of individuals who got this combination. So he was just stating that this would be a small number of individuals, and by and large, the majority of individuals under the ERP would have gotten their full amount from the NIC directly. So just giving that assurance from the NIC, he also addressed, persons being upset about, not having gotten this information prior. So individuals might have received a stipend from the employer, but thought nothing of it, and satisfied that they would have gotten no less than $500 from the NIC directly. So he did admit that the NIC was more preoccupied with rolling out the program than I guess sensitizing the public on how it would be rolled out, if I could say so.
Quand il pour faire puis NIC, quand nous continuons about développement et formation, quand ils savent samedi nous parler by monsieur Mark Norton McLean et c'est lui qui est responsable pour information là vini pour NIC. Écoutez peut-être observer en chaimouna sur média social qu'a dit l'argent yo en compagnie mundi yo en 100 compagnie mundi $20 et changer encore ça t'est supposé hard stimulus gouvernement a proposé
plan.
Il teni plan ça pour assister nation quand il pour faire Covid plan gouvernement et puis après il parlé by NIC c'est date qui according pour salaire ou te ka 500 et ben 1500 et puis pour ces gens qui a fait moins payer $1,000 et ça a fait pliper $3,000 quoi according pour salaire ou te ka $500 et ben 1500 pour assister avec ça qui sorti hard NIC mais ça qui fait là avec ça nous une explanation dit samedi c'est si on fait premier fortnight tout parce que ça t'est supposé commencer en avril quand si ou te hen si ko ka travail là yo te habao $200 ça veut dire NIC kay ba ou $300. Quand il bail explanation, monsieur McNaughton bail explanation pour dire en chaque moun quoi si ou fait premier fortnight tout et puis yo ba ou $200 ou te ka hen $500 mais ça pas ça y est ça yo ka dire c'est l'argent ici ka ba c'est pour supporter et puis pour moun qui perd travail yo il c'est un support et puis pour moun qui perd travail moi vieux dit encore as a result du Covid et que l'autre bagay là qui était bien classé ou teni pour faire un premier dernier paiement t'es supposé en février quand c'était ces conditions et puis les vini pour quoi travail là il était supposé vraie information ça by NIC quand mettez tout ça ensemble en chaque monde qui déjà une première fortnight yo ka quoi et ben ka yo te coupon yo te ka joindre même $500 quand monsieur maintenant dit il kay d'accord Là vini pour ça qui fait là, en chay yo même te trouvé ko yo engagé ka préparer bagay, ka préparer ces formes nan, ka mettre bagay en place pour les moun commencer mener ces applications yon dedans. Quoi yo pas prend assez temps pour payer attention pour lire pour bail explanation, mais c'est ça hier, c'est pas tant situation côté gouvernement dit ka bay moun 500 qui pas bali. Mais il bien dit là ni yon des moun qui peut-être expériencer date qui yo te vle pli $500 qui yo hen 200 juste en compagnie moun qui dit yo hen 40 et $60 et qui a dit vini mois prochain en chay moun kay yo hen $500 mais encore si ou ha oui tourner en travail ça veut dire ka travail assistance ça c'est pour moun qui pas ka travail et qui en limo pour en chay moun il dit c'est moun qui peut-être quoi yo ni en situation ben yo pas joindre l'argent yo te supposé hen il a yo pe kouye yo à limo 457 6003 ça c'est 4576003 et ben il dit yo ça là sur internet là COVID-19 at saintlucianic.org. Il bien important il dit si personne quoi yo pas hen l'argent yo te supposé contacter yo et puis yo kay côté problème nan yé. Parmi l'autre bagay il dit c'est les vini pour en chay place travail ko ka travail là c'est moun ça supposé aller sur internet là et di yo ko moun ki ka travail ko moun ki pas ka travail quoi nous ka ou bien comprendre situation à présent.
Again, under this income support, this economic relief program, no one is supposed to receive less than $500. And we're hearing from McNaughton McLean, the communications consultant. If you're just joining us, we got word from the NIC that if you make less than $1,000 in your salary, the income support that would be granted to you would be no less than $500. So individuals who received less than $500, he's stating that it would be a combination of the stipend that you would have received from your employer and the balance being paid out by the NIC. And of course, he stated that only a handful of individuals received the part stipend and part stipend and part balance from the NIC. And we have a clip of Mr. McLean just addressing, persons being very anxious about the situation and stating that they didn't get this information immediately. Off the bat, when the economic relief program was announced, people did not hear, well, you will receive, if you due $500, you will receive $300 from your employee. If you receive $300 from your employee, NIC will only pay you $200 as no less than $500 payout. He did address this in terms of the level of sensitization that was going on at the time.
Perhaps we were, I can readily accept that, we were more concerned about making the payments, being able to finally make the payouts because we had a lot of applications. We had a lot to do prior to being able to release the e-form in terms of developing the systems required. When the COVID-19 hit, we recognized quickly that it was going to be an issue financially for contributors. And so in developing the program, it took some time. We had to build IT systems from the ground up because there's no way we could manually enter all of that information for over 18,000 applicants under the program. And so therefore it took a little longer, and perhaps we were more preoccupied with doing that and did not focus a lot on it. And in all of our advertising, we keep reminding people to refer to the website for all the information on the ERP, Economic Relief Program. So I can accept that perhaps we did not focus on it as much as we should, but to say that there is no information relating to that is not quite the case, because we did put that information out there. And there, even prior to the first payment, there were people inquiring, and it's there in several of the responses. We've speaking to a lot of the applicants and making them aware of the conditions.
So there you have it, word from the communications consultant at the NIC, just bringing some clarity to what has been the rollout of the income support, the economic relief program from the NIC, and stating there that, you know, understandably acknowledging that perhaps they were not too heavy on the sensitization aspect, more preoccupied with the rolling out of the program, you know, the online infrastructure for applications to come in and so on. So that word there coming from Mr. McNaughton-McLean. If anyone, although to his knowledge, no one has received less than $500 in total between the employer and NIC. But if anyone has received less than $500 in income support in total from the employer and NIC, they are asked to contact the NIC directly at 457-6003 to log their queries or concerns. They can also send an email to COVID-19 at stlucianic.org. That is COVID-19 at stlucianic.org. So that word there, clarity. We hope persons have a better understanding of this NIC situation. Persons were in uproar. You know, some people seeing double digits on their accounts and being concerned as to how, because sometimes you budget the $500 before you get it.
Exactly, Jesse, and I think what the essence or the basis of everything here right now is understanding what was said in terms of it's an assistance. You know, it's a government assistance for persons who lost employment as a result of COVID for initial 3 months and to be considered. But I think we should also note the amount is deductible, right? It is deductible from your employers, whatever the employer has given to you one way or the other, because when the announcement came, a lot of persons, even to this point, there were employers who tell you they would still keep their employees to try and, you know, ride it through. But I'm thinking the miscommunication or understanding, may I say, but for now I think it fallen good at it's an assistance. You know, it is not for, okay, if you are working and you lose 2 days, you get your full $500 or $1,500.
Full salary.
Yeah, it should be noted, it's an assistance. And I was happy when Mr. McNaughton also clarified on the 18th, the statement was read.
Yes.
You know, as to exactly the details of it, but persons were of the opinion, and rightly so, as he said, they were engaged in putting things together, and even the ticklish matter they had with forms, persons starting, they had to deal with that and whatsoever. But I'm thinking right now, persons now would have got a better grip to what is happening and what exactly are the stipulations. If you lost employment as a result of COVID, then, and of course, apart from the conditions being stated, you would have had to make that payment in February. Your last payment would have been in February, and your employer also would have had to upload that information to the portal which they have given them access to. So, I mean, the domino effect persons need to take into consideration, and I feel definitely, Jesse, it could be a little clearer and persons could understand what's going on.
And to NIC's credit, the documentation outlining, you know, all the conditions of the economic relief program were published. It was online for persons to go through, peruse, and so on. But sometimes you have to speak things out to individuals so that they can really get the gist of how they're going to benefit, what their income support is going to look like. So clarity there from Mr. McNaughton-McLean. We will continue our COVID-19 response report this morning. After this break, we continue. Saint Lucia receiving more returning nationals, and they're going into quarantine as of this week. Stay tuned for that update, which happened this weekend, and more coming up in just a moment.
And in the latest news, the coronavirus, or COVID-19, continues to be a health emergency across the world. Caribbean people are concerned.
Everybody know about COVID-19. COVID-19. Keep socially distance and your proper hygiene. Wash your hands then clean. And don't discriminate, cause it might be, it very well could be, somebody will look like you or look like me. Listening. We're in this together. We all got to work with each other. Look out for our friends and our neighbor. And if you feel sick, don't be afraid to call the doctor.
Red Cross volunteers from across the Caribbean, working hard to fight discrimination. So if a person should feel ill, then they will contact the authorities without hesitation.
The most vulnerable are the elderly, but the truth is it can infect anybody. So what we need is solidarity. Everyone helping everyone like a family. So
this is a message to the nation. Make sure you seek out the right information from official sources like the Ministry of Health, Red Cross, and the World Health Organization.
Everybody know about COVID-19. COVID-19. Keep socially distance and your proper hygiene. Wash Wash your hands then clean. And don't discriminate, cause it might be, it very well could be, somebody will look like you or look like me. Listening, listening.
People around the world facing this pandemic. Coronavirus have the whole world a panic. Now is not the time to be fearful, but to be careful, supportive and empathetic.
This is the state of the society. Some people full of fear and anxiety. Yo, a lot of fake news in the community. But what we need now is more love and unity. So
This is a message to the nation. Make sure you seek out the right information from official sources like the Ministry of Health, Red Cross and the World Health Organization.
everybody know about COVID-19. COVID-19. Keep socially distance and your proper hygiene. Wash your hands then clean. And don't discriminate, cause it might be, it very well could be, somebody will look like you or look like me. Listening, listening. We're in this together. We all got to work with each other. Look out for our friends and our neighbor. And if you feel sick, don't be afraid to call the doctor.
Thank you so much for staying with us. If you're just joining us on air and online, a special welcome to you. We opened the morning with a word of the convening of Parliament this week. Among other things, our parliamentarians will be returning for the forwarding of an extension to the state of emergency in Saint Lucia to the end of September. We're still under the threat of COVID-19, and while we've made significant stride in containing and managing COVID-19, there's still, concern that perhaps we may need to revert. We need to be prepared for any eventuality under this current situation. Also, word from the NIC explaining and just bringing some clarity to this matter as it pertains to the economic relief program, the income support that has since been received. Persons being very concerned about the balances that they're seeing, that they're getting from the NIC. Just to give you a relief, it is the balance that you might see is just the balance perhaps from the stipend you may have received from your employer. So if you have any concerns, if you have any worries, you can contact the NIC so that further clarification can be made in your unique instance. This morning, over the weekend, we saw more Saint Lucians being returned to the island and placed into quarantine. The weekend of May 23rd, 2020, I'm just reading from a press release from the weekend from the Ministry of Health and Wellness. The Department of Health and Wellness received 151 St. Lucians, 59 are cruise ship workers on the Disney Fantasy, 73 from the Royal Vision of the Seas, and 19 are nationals repatriated from Canada and Barbados. The nationals will be received and placed into quarantine for a period of 14 days as per the country's established protocol. And just to give you some more information on quarantine, we really do hope that you would have gotten the difference between quarantine and isolation and so on. We've been talking about it for so long, but quarantine is necessary for persons who are well, with no symptoms of ill health, but who may have been exposed to a communicable disease. It restricts the movement of very healthy people who may develop a disease after possible exposure to an infectious agent. In this context, this agent can be COVID-19. Quarantine requires people to remain in a designated location for a specific period of time. Active monitoring by healthcare specialists, including temperature checks and assessment of respiratory symptoms, are done routinely for the entire quarantine period. So this will be the experience of the St. Lucians who have been repatriated over the weekend. We heard from the Minister for Tourism a few weeks ago when we had the second batch of St. Lucians being brought back home from the cruise ships, giving us the assurance that by the 24th of May, we would see more St. Lucians coming in. And so said, so done. We have 151 St. Lucians being repatriated, 59 cruise ship workers on the Disney Fantasy, 73 Royal Vision of the Seas, and 19 are nationals repatriated from Canada and Barbados. So it's not just cruise ship workers in this instance. Now we have students from Canada. We have individuals, St. Lucians abroad, Canada and Barbados, who have been desirous of returning home, and the authorities facilitating this repatriation. Just to let you know, St. Lucia continues to record no additional confirmed cases of COVID-19 in Saint Lucia on island. On May 22nd, 2020, a batch of 31 tests were conducted and all came back negative. This brings our total number of national testing to date to 898 tests. Saturday, March 21st is the 20th. Sorry about that. Saturday, May 21st is the 20th consecutive day since we have recorded a confirmed case of COVID-19. I hope we can keep that those consecutive days of no COVID-19 going for as long as possible.
Merci tellement, Jesse, pour ça. Quand nous continuons avec l'information ici à bon matin, lundi, à Ouhatton, là, venu pour situation NIC. Explanation là, nous tenons expressément là, pour faire manière où trouver assistance. Ça encore, l'argent, c'est pas l'argent pour bailler tout le monde, mais c'est assistance. Hot gouvernement bas package stimulus là. Et puis là, nous ba explanation, c'est que en chaque monde là, on ka hen soute à hen en fortnight, yo kai point en considération fortnight ça et puis yo kai ba au l'instant balance $500 si c'est ça ou supposé hen. En parmi l'autre développement qu'a fait ou kai savent les vini pour Saint Lucia qu'a retourné nous ni ben nous tenir week-end 151 Saint Lucia qui est repatrié, ça veut dire vieux Saint Lucie et puis en parmi yo ou kai 19 anciens national ça yo sorti hod baba depuis Canada teni 17 19 là et puis là est venu pour ces jeunes nous ni ka travailler sous ces bâtiments touristes là nous 59 anciens moun ça vini à bord Disney Fantasy bateau Disney Fantasy et puis après ça nous ni 73 qui les 25 qui vini à sous Royal Vision ça c'est moun qui ka travailler sous ces bâtiments quoi en tout nous ni 151 c'est national nous qui est vieux repatrié c'est moun ça vieux Saint Lucie tellement content pour nous qu'on la côté mais bon hatten parole la pas ni pièce côté qui plein mais pays caillou mais au cas changer aussi qu'à suivre protocole tout ces moun ça qui trouvé koyo en quarantine ça veut dire yo veut assurer ces moun ça pas ni pièce sin vermin covid là et puis yo même si on est yo ni temps adresser situation avec météo en isolation quoi yo kay fait 14 jours en quarantine, ça bon nouvelle tout bonnement. Et vous kay aussi savent vini il y a à peu près 20 jours nous pour connaître pièce situation mais personne qui a trouvé contaminé mais contacté 20 000 corona qu'on à 100% nous ni tout le monde a couvert et nous pas ni pièce cas de corona présent en pays ça pas veut dire messieurs dames ou pas ni pour mettre en check ça pas veut dire ou pas ni pour continuer suivre protocole mettez pas les autorités pour date ou ça nous a conducté à peu près 890 tests nous a sous chimère qui doit être là grâce à Dieu nous pas connait personne qui mort et nous pas ni pièce cas nous ka croire ikaisa wete quoi nous ka continuer ba au développement nous ka continuer ba information ici à headquarters COVID-19 à sous en lundi bon matin le 25 mai.
Okay. During the period, I just wanted to add to the quarantine situation. Right now, we have 151 more St. Lucians having been repatriated over the weekend. And the Department of Health once again asked the public to work with them to reduce the impact of COVID-19. Persons coming from abroad, they need to abide by the quarantine protocols. We ask that relatives support their loved ones in quarantine by encouraging their adherence to the requirements of the quarantine. On another note, if you are aware of anyone coming into the country by unofficial means, our borders are not yet open under the state of emergency. We do hope that you alert the authorities, and if you are placed in quarantine, please stay there. These measures are to keep all of us safe. The Department of Health and Wellness will continue to provide us with regular updates, and we do expect additional updates on this, the St. Lucians that have just been returned. Hopefully we can give you an update by tomorrow morning or during the course of the day when we have further programming on our COVID-19 watch. This These are the updates coming to you from the Information Command Center at the GIS studios. Parliament convening this week to, among other things, extend the state of emergency to September, the end of September. Also, NIC clarifies the mode of payouts under the Economic Relief Program. We're also hearing of more Saint Lucians returning and being placed in quarantine. When we come back, we hear about the accommodations that are being made for grade 6 and Form 5 students to prepare for their examinations. Do stay tuned for that and more coming up in just a moment.
Coronavirus? But children are safe, no?
Hold up. Children are actually more likely to touch all kinds of surfaces, put their hands on their mouths and their eyes, or sneeze and cough with little thought about hygiene when around others. While children have been seen to recover well from this virus, they can easily spread it to those more at risk, like the elderly or ill persons who have a weaker immune system. Teach the little ones in your care to be little powerhouses of infection prevention. Keep reminding them, wash your hands. Cover your mouth with tissue or your inner elbow when you sneeze and cough. And be sure to praise them when you see them taking these precautions. Our health is in our hands. Together, through simple actions, we can stop the spread of coronavirus. This message was brought to you by the Bureau of Health Education of the Ministry of Health and Wellness.
Thank you for staying tuned. On Friday, we heard from the Ministry of Education that protocols have been finalized to facilitate national examinations and the phased reopening of schools, specifically for grade 6 and Form 5 students preparing for the Common Entrance Examination and the CSEC. Just to give you some background information, physical school attendance for the third term of the academic year, we're in the third term right now, it remains suspended. Physical classes. So you would have heard of the learning from home, e-learning, all of these things. We've had the experts, the officials coming in to speak on that so far. Health officials have cleared. We heard from the Ministry of Health and Wellness, the CMO, Dr. Sharon Belmont George, stating that they have cleared the education sector to reopen in full. However, the Ministry of Education is being cautious. They're proceeding with a safe, very cautious, phased reopening of its schools, and initially this will facilitate at least 3 weeks of in-class instruction for grade 6 and Form 5 students before they sit the Common Entrance Examination and the CSEC, and that will begin on June 2nd. Of course, this will be done, from school to school. It will be different. You have some schools that are smaller than others, primary schools. It may take some more time for them to get in a good groove of in-class instruction, but that is the word we're getting from the Ministry of Education. Let's go to a clip from Dr. Fiona Philip-Meyer, the Chief Education Officer, speaking on Friday on the protocols being finalized to facilitate the national examinations and the phased reopening of schools to facilitate the grade 6s and the Form 5s.
We appreciate that schools are different. A school with 120 grade 6 students is a different environment to a school with 20 grade 6 students. And so there will be an individual plan based on each of those schools, similarly for our secondary schools. We spoke of some of the issues for our parents and making sure that we get the names of vulnerable students for our school feeding, our transportation subsidy, the use of our mask. All of those bits of information have been collected to ensure that any needs that we have out there, we do our utmost to ensure that our students get the best possible reintegration into the school. We have not left out our teachers, and we continue to say that teacher voice is important in the implementation of this program moving forward. Our counseling services continue to be available to all of us.
That was Dr. Fiona Philip-Meyer, the Chief Education Officer at the Ministry of Education. They're speaking on the reopening of schools. Of course, a phased reopening of schools being done in a very safe, cautious manner. Just to let you know, the Common Entrance Examination is scheduled for June 29th. Approximately 2,198 students will be sitting that examination. For CAPE and CSEC, That will be done between the 29th of June to the 17th of July. We have 492 candidates for CAPE, and for CSEC, that is CXC, we have 2,444 candidates for that examination. The Caribbean Certificate of Secondary Level Competence, that's the CCSLC, that is 114 students, candidates will be sitting that examination. Students are encouraged to bring a mask from home. So for your grade 6 students and for the Form 5 students who will be returning to school just to get some last lap instruction before their examinations, the students are encouraged to bring a mask to school. However, the Ministry of Education has assured that it will be providing the schools, both primary and secondary, with masks for students and administrators who may need masks. All decisions following COVID-19 are made based on the National Risk Assessment, and that word was coming from the CMO, Dr. Sharon Belmar-George, Chief Medical Officer, and stating that all the decisions of COVID-19, including education, are being made by looking at the data that we're receiving. We had the national epidemiologist last week speaking on how the data trends guide Saint Lucia's response to COVID-19, and the CMO re-emphasized this, as well as re-emphasized us learning to coexist with COVID-19 at this time. I saw on Facebook somebody queried, okay, so we have the state of emergency being extended to the end of September. Does that mean school will not reopen in time for September? We cannot make any statements at this time. Again, the information we're getting from the authorities is that they're responding as the data comes through. So increase in cases, reduction in cases would either bring us forward or revert us to previous phases in our response to this virus. We have Dr. Sharon Belmar-George speaking on us learning to coexist with COVID-19.
Saint Lucia continues to record no additional confirmed cases of COVID-19. On May 21st, 2020, a batch of 40 tests conducted were all negative. This brings our total of national testing to date to 867 tests. Thursday, March 21st, is the 18th consecutive day since we have recorded a confirmed case of COVID-19. This is quite encouraging results for us at the Ministry of Health. And
if we could just go to the clip, Dr. Sharon Belmar-George, CMO. That clip was just an update of what we spoke of earlier. A clip from the CMO speaking about the education sector and us learning to coexist with COVID-19 and that guiding our decisions as it pertains to every sector in St. Lucia.
It is estimated that COVID-19 will be here with us for over 2 years. The education sector, in a similar way, like every other sector, needs to implement protocols to ensure safe instruction of our students. In reality, the option of keeping schools closed for 2 years. We understand the panic and the fear related to COVID-19, and this is also justified given the pandemic in the developed world. But we cannot act out of fear. We need to use the assessment of our local situation and ensure the necessary measures are in place to move forward.
So that word there coming from the Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Sharon Belmar-George, speaking alongside the Chief Education Officer on Friday as protocols that have been finalized were announced to facilitate the national examinations and the phased reopening of schools, specifically at this time for grade 6 and Form 5. Just to let you know again, the Ministry of Education has gotten clearance from health officials from the Operations Command Center to reopen the education sector in full. However, they are saying they're going to do so in a phased, a very safe, cautious manner in their own response to COVID-19 and understanding the limitations of everyone involved, all of the stakeholders involved. We just want to let you know the common entrance exam once again will be happening on June 29th. The CAPE and CSEC examinations will be held for the period between 29th June to the 17th of July. We continue to remind you that physical school attendance for the third term of the academic year remains suspended. And you, for grade 6 and Form 5, you will be getting word on how you can return to school to have at least 3 weeks of in-class instruction before you sit the common entrance examination and the CSEC, and that in-class instruction will begin on June 2nd. But all other grades, all other forms, aside from grade 6 and form 5, you continue to remain home and continue the learning from home instruction modality that has been put out by the Ministry of Education. Carlton?
Encore nous dit bonjour et merci especially pour ces gens qui suivent nous en l'autre pays qui a sur Facebook et qui écoutent nous sur radio. Nous ici à headquarters COVID-19 qui about toute information et développement là ni pour faire et puis COVID. Là nous a parlé about NIC et nous parlé about kai concite demain nous ca continuer about information et à présent l'école en chay parler de l'école qui manière l'école ka ouvert qui ça ka là nous tan hot CMO là vini pour l'école yo jaba yo clair pour ouvert mais condition ces conditions y bien clair l'école kay prend en considération en chay bagay en parmi yo manière yo kay ouvert parce que on kay bien savent maman pas ça ensemble tout le monde pas ça vinn ensemble qu'on la coutume quoi mi c'est ça qui kay fait là là vini pour c'est maman l'école là toute maman l'école a pas dit maman grade 6 et c'est maman form 5 ça c'est maman secondaire en 5e forme c'est moun ça c'est celle 7 maman qui kay retourner yo kay ni 3 semaines pour travail pour yo préparer quoi yo pour examination encore ou kay savent les vini pour bail direction pour ouvrir payer mais pour ouvrir pièce secteur ça ka sorti hard centre commande là et puis déjà yo a dit l'école yo ça ouvert et puis nous tan hard Dr. Fiona Philippe Mayer c'est lui qui chef officier éducation là il dit yo a pris un chay bagay en considération et puis yo pas kay ouvert tout le monde yo kay fait en phase pour raison kay tan encore là vini pour maman grade 6 et maman secondaire en 5e forme c'est moun ça c'est yo qui kay retourner l'école avant yo kay ba yo assez temps ça à peu près 3 semaines pour faire préparation yo raison pour ça c'est maman ça là vini pour common entrance yo kay fait examination yo le 29 juin ça c'est le 29 juin là vini pour ces maman là qui a fait Cape et puis CSEC c'est moun ça yo kay fait examination yo le 29 pour le 17 juillet et puis ou kay savent trouver comment informer ça c'est ces dates là pour vous plus information qu'a sorti hot CMO il a dit même si c'est maman ça kay aller l'école y en a ces bagaille là yoni pour chain en cerveau ben yoni pour changer c'est date qui maman yo kan encourager parents pour bail issue en masse fait assurer c'est maman là ni masse il dit l'école là kayni mais il bien important pour savoir si maman là supposé ni à masse ka quitter kay là parce que en chay maman ni pour point boss en chay maman ni pour voyager pour aller l'école quand est bien important pour vous ba issue yon masse yo do aussi en l'école là kayni parmi l'autre bagaille là vini pour décision qui ka fait là vini pour ouvrir l'école là vini pour manière qui a fait là changer encore ça ka sort des hard centre commande là ces gens ensemble CMO département santé l'école yo tout ka assis ensemble ve qui manière bagaille en pays ve qui manière situation Covid là et après yo kay prend en décision quand là nous ka quoi ou ka comprendre manière bagaille là hier premier pas yo jabay l'école là permission pour ouvrir mais c'est qu'on a kay ouvert yo kay commencer puis c'est maman là qui a fait common entrance et comment dit c'est maman ça supposé faire test yo le 29 juin et puis c'est balance maman là qui a fait Cape et puis c'est maman ça qui fait examination yo le 29 pour le 17 juillet c'est moun ça qui a fait examination mais yo kay ba yo 3 semaines d'avance pour faire préparation et c'est yo qui kay retourner l'école avant encore conseiller moi dit c'est bagay ça c'est pas du temps yo ka aller chaque 14 jours 2 semaines yo ka prendre en considération li mois yo joindre là ni pour faire covid situation nous en dedans si nous ni pièce ka si nous pas ni pièce ka si possible si pas possible et depuis yo bay c'est moun sa information ou kay ouais c'est moun ça ka mettre opération en place qu'on a trouvé qu'on informé dat ki lè vini pour l'école, c'est pas toute maman qui a retourné l'école, lè yo kay retourné yo kay di mais yo ja jwenn permission pour ouvert pour ces maman là qui a préparé pour common entrance, CSEC, CXI et puis c'est différentes examinations ça yo ja ba yo permission et puis yo kay ni pli information lè vini pour ça.
Thank you very much for that, Carlton. Well, our time is winding down. We'd like to thank you so much for tuning in and getting the latest updates from the Information Command Center live from the GIS studios. Just to go over the top developments, we have Parliament convening this week to, in part, put forward a motion to extend the state of emergency to the 30th of September. Also, we heard on Saturday the NIC calling in Representative Mr. McNaughton McLean, the communications consultant, clarifying the mode of payouts under the economic relief program. The economic support that the NIC is giving out is in tandem, is in part with the employers, any stipend that the employers might have given. So if you received less than $500 from the NIC, then it would be that you also received a stipend from your employer to make up the $500. We also got word from the Ministry of Health and Wellness, 151 Saint Lucians repatriated over the weekend. 59 cruise ship workers from the Disney Fantasy, 73 from the Royal Vision of the Seas cruise ship, and 19 coming back from Canada and Barbados. So we're not just seeing this batch is a combination of individuals coming from the high seas and from the territories abroad, the Canada and Barbados. And of course, all 151 St. Lucians that have been repatriated over the weekend have been placed into a 14-day quarantine. And finally, protocols have been finalized to facilitate the national examinations and the phased reopening of school, and that is specifically for grade 6 and Form 5. Initially, this will facilitate at least 3 weeks of in-class instruction for grade 6 and Form 5 students before they sit the common entrance and CSEC, and that in-class instruction will begin on June 2nd. All other forms, all other grades must remain home and continue to receive their instruction online. It's a learning from home term for all other classes at this time. We are pleased to note that there have been no new cases. St. Lucia continues to record no additional confirmed cases of COVID-19. On May 22nd, 2020, a batch of 31 tests were conducted and they all came back negative. And we do hope to continue this negative streak until we can get away from this grip of COVID-19 under the threat of COVID-19. Carlton, any final words? I'm calling you COVID, man. I've said COVID so many times.
And of course, Jesse, the emphasis on letting people know we are still in the fight. And of course, we did speak to the fact that what would cause us to go back to our situation or any one of our phase reopening. Ça qui est bien important, moun ni pour savoir, c'est l'invini pour tout ça qui a fait, en décision ni pour fait, mais décision ça qui a sorti hot direction hot, c'est gens qui sont responsables pour centre commande là, parmi eux qui savent c'est le ministre qui est responsable pour le tourisme, qui est chairman, parmi aussi MOA, et moun qui est ni expérience là. Quand les point c'est l'IMOA, les veut connaître situation et puis Covid, c'est les qui fait une décision. Quand personne c'est date là, personne ça nous a dit tout le temps yo pas veiller c'est l'IMOA, tout le temps yo pas ouais condition nous, tout le temps yo pas ouais combien monde qui né qui un bel exemple yo te baï c'est si nous tend en chaque côté en Saint Lucia ni yon monde qui ni Covid, ça veut dire ni pour partir avec tout pas tous ces monde ça passé tout ça yo fait avec mes ressources d'or pour faire si oui pas si manger pli mais si nous tend yon kaini que mais ces monde ça yo ça doit c'est quoi situation c'est une personne pas jamais expérimenté quoi nous a dit quoi ça dit nous pour connait personne qui mort et merci bon Dieu nous a managé pour tchebe qu'on en situation nous ya pour tout mais c'est nous a dit continuer suivre protocole et nous quoi si nous fait ça nous ca ça rabattre ça fait Covid là dans bonne manière. tout bonnement.
Absolutely. We're still under a state of emergency, and should the outcome of the parliamentary proceedings be that we get an extension to September 30th, we will be under a state of emergency until September and continue to adhere to the protocols. We have a curfew 9 to 5 a.m. Ensure that by all means you get home and you get indoors by 9 p.m. Nightly, and do wear the mask. Observe the 6-foot distance. We have the businesses reopening from last week. And we do hope that when you do go into those businesses, all the patrons, even the employees, the employers, everyone is doing their part to ensure that we could stave off COVID-19 as much as possible. My name is Jessie Leonce on behalf of Carlton Cyril and the rest of the production team. We do hope that you have an enjoyable day. We have more NTN programming throughout today. We do hope you stay tuned for that and more. But for now, I'm signing off from the Information Command Center live from the GIS studios. Goodbye.